Have you ever wondered why, after 60 years of dedicating your entire life to your family, you suddenly became invisible? Why do those for whom you sacrificed your dreams, careers, and even your very identity now treat you as an inconvenient burden, a shadow that insists on existing in the corners of the house you built yourself? There's a cruel and silent truth that permeates millions of homes. The woman who devoted decades to caring for others becomes, paradoxically, the least cared for, when she most needs attention, respect, and recognition. What you're about to discover will shake the foundations of everything you believed about family loyalty and gratitude. Because the reality is that 9 out of 10 caregivers for the elderly are women, and these same women, when they reach their own vulnerable stage, face the most painful phenomenon in human experience: emotional abandonment by those they loved most. This isn't just a cold statistic. It's a perverse cultural pattern that turns mothers, grandmothers, and caregivers into ghosts in their own families. The question that echoes in the silence of empty rooms is not just, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "How did I allow it to get to this point?" There is something deeply disturbing about the way our society consumes female love as an infinite and renewable resource, only to discard it the moment the source begins to show signs of fatigue. You feel that, don't you? That feeling that you have given everything you had, and now you are receiving crumbs of affection, as if you were a stranger begging for affection in your own home. What lies behind this cruel inversion of family values transcends individual issues. It is a systemic phenomenon that affects 1 in 5 families, transforming homes into silent battlefields where generational conflict manifests itself through calculated indifference. Your adult children, who once ran to your arms for comfort, now avoid your embraces as if they were suffocating. Your grandchildren know their electronic devices better than your own eyes. And you wonder where you went wrong, when in fact the error lies in the system that conditioned you to believe that your value as a woman was directly linked to how much you could nullify yourself in favor of others. Get ready for a revelation that goes beyond the obvious, because what you will discover in the following revelations are not just explanations. They are the keys to understanding how years of social conditioning, distorted expectations, and toxic family patterns converged to create this painful reality that you live today. And more importantly, how this understanding can be the first step to rewriting the end of your own story, transforming imposed invisibility into a conscious and respected presence. The first truth that no one dares to say is that you were systematically conditioned, since you were a girl, to believe that your value as a woman was directly proportional to how much you were able to annul yourself in favor of others. You grew up hearing that a real woman is one who puts her family first, who sacrifices her dreams for the dreams of others, who transforms her own existence into fuel to feed the ambitions and needs of her husband, children, grandchildren, and relatives. This conditioning was not accidental. It was a perfect social mechanism to ensure that you became a compulsive donor of vital energy, an inexhaustible source of care and attention that would never charge emotional dividends for its investment. For decades, you have embodied this role with an almost religious dedication, genuinely believing that you were building indestructible bonds of gratitude and love. Every meal prepared with care, every sleepless night nursing fevers and nightmares, every personal dream postponed to pay for your children's education, all of this seemed to deposit credits in an emotional account that would one day be redeemed in the form of care, respect, and recognition. But herein lies the cruel irony. By teaching your family that you existed solely for their sake, you inadvertently conditioned them to see you as a natural resource, as obvious and predictable as the air they breathe. The patriarchal system that has shaped entire generations has created a perfect psychological trap. It has transformed maternal and conjugal love into a kind of voluntary servitude, where the woman who truly loves is the one who never questions, never demands space for her own needs. You have been trained to feel guilty when expressing personal desires, to consider any movement towards self-fulfillment as selfish, to measure your success as a woman by the success of others. And now, when the time has finally come when you should reap the fruits of this emotional investment, you discover that you have planted on dry ground. The society that conditioned you to be the eternal caregiver now punishes you for the audacity of aging, of showing weaknesses, of needing care. It is as if you have violated an invisible contract. You were supposed to remain eternally strong, eternally available, eternally subservient. The moment your energy began to decline, your reflexes slowed, your memory began to fail, was the moment you became a nuisance to those who had grown accustomed to receiving without giving in return. The woman who was once the gravitational center of the family now orbits on the periphery, watching from afar as others assume the leading role you built for them. This perverse reversal of values does not happen abruptly. It is a subtle, almost imperceptible process that begins when you turn 60 and begin to wonder, however quietly, where your reward for a lifetime of giving lies. Your children, who grew up taking it for granted that you should always be available, now interpret any need you have as an inconvenient burden. Your presence, which once was synonymous with comfort and security, now sees it as an interference in their real lives, their important careers, their priority relationships. The second movement in this cruel family symphony is the transfer of emotional responsibility that occurs when your children reach adulthood. They direct all the emotional energy you invested in them toward their own families, spouses, children, careers, and you become a secondary player in their lives, a figurehead who must make do with formal visits and hasty phone calls. It is devastating to realize that the love you thought was unconditional was, in fact, conditional on your usefulness, your ability to solve problems, make things easier, and offer support without ever asking for anything in return. The family you built with so much effort now operates like a company where you have been promoted to the position of retired consultant, respected in theory, but ignored in practice. Your opinions are tolerated with condescending patience. Your advice is greeted with polite smiles that barely conceal impatience. Your emotional needs are treated as the whims of old age. You have become a ghost in your own home, a presence that everyone recognizes but no one really sees, a voice that everyone hears but no one actually listens to. The toxic dynamic intensifies when you dare to express dissatisfaction with this new reality. Any expression of discontent is immediately labeled as drama, excessive neediness, or difficulty accepting that your children have grown up. Your legitimate feelings of abandonment and devaluation are pathologized, transformed into symptoms of inadequate adaptation to aging. It's as if someone has rewritten your biography, erasing decades of dedication and reducing your current identity to a list of limitations and inconvenient demands. The most painful thing is to realize that you yourself contributed to this dynamic by never setting healthy boundaries, by never teaching your family that true love includes reciprocity, respect, and recognition. For years, you confused love with total availability, care with self-denial, motherhood with martyrdom, and now, when you try to renegotiate the terms of this relationship, you discover that it is too late. The standards are crystallized, the expectations are solidified, and any attempt to change is seen as a unilateral breach of contract. The third element of this devastating equation is the profound psychological impact that this devaluation has on your identity and self-esteem. After decades of defining yourself through the roles of mother, wife, and caregiver, you find yourself facing an overwhelming existential void when these roles lose relevance or are taken over by others. It is as if the ground has been pulled out from under your feet, leaving you floating in an undefined space where you no longer know who you are or what your place in the world is. The feeling of worthlessness that sets in is gnawing and silent, sapping your confidence and your will to live day after day. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the woman you see, not just physically, but emotionally. Where is that vibrant person who could manage an entire household, resolve family conflicts, be the safe haven for all problems? That woman seems to have disappeared, replaced by someone who feels small, irrelevant, a dead weight in a family that continues its fast pace without looking back. The loneliness you experience is not just physical, it is existential. Being surrounded by family and yet feeling profoundly alone is one of the most devastating experiences a human being can face. It is worse than being literally alone, because loneliness in a crowd carries with it the bitterness of disappointment, the pain of emotional betrayal, the feeling of having been deceived for decades about the nature of the relationships you considered most solid. Your thoughts become a battlefield where justified anger and internalized guilt clash. Part of you wants to scream, confront, demand the recognition you deserve. Another part whispers that perhaps you are being dramatic, demanding, that you should be content with the little you receive and be grateful for not having been completely abandoned. This internal war is exhausting, and can lead to depression, anxiety, and even the development of psychosomatic illnesses that no one in the family can understand or take seriously. Emotional isolation intensifies when you realize that you no longer have anyone to share your anguish with. Your friends your age may be going through similar situations, but there is a silent conspiracy to keep these feelings from being talked about, as if verbalizing them were a form of betrayal of your family or an admission of personal failure. You become trapped in a cycle of solitary suffering, ruminating on hurt feelings, reliving moments of disrespect, and questioning every decision you have made over the decades. The fourth layer of this complex family dynamic reveals the subtle mechanisms by which your invisibility is constructed and maintained on a day-to-day basis. It's not about dramatic episodes of rejection, but about a series of microaggressions, calculated omissions, and seemingly innocent slights that, when accumulated, form a devastating pattern of systematic devaluation. It's as if your family has developed a refined ability to make you feel dispensable without ever having to say so directly. Notice how your opinions are received during family conversations. There is always someone who changes the subject in the middle of your speech, who answers their cell phone while you are talking, who interrupts your words to tell something supposedly more interesting. Your stories from the past, which were once listened to with attention and affection, now provoke looks of impatience, disguised sighs, comments like, "We've heard that story 1,000 times." It is as if your memory, your experiences, your accumulated wisdom have lost all relevance and interest. Important family decisions are made without your input, even when they directly affect your life. Changes to the home you live in, changes to your family routine, plans for holidays and celebrations. These are all decided by others, and you are informed as a formality, not consulted as an active participant. When you dare to question or suggest alternatives, you are treated as someone who is complicating situations that have already been resolved by the responsible adults in the family. Your birthday and Christmas gifts become increasingly generic and unpersonalized. Drugstore products, basic clothing, practical objects that show that no one has taken the time to think about what will actually please you. Meanwhile, you watch as your same children invest time, money, and creativity in elaborate gifts for spouses, children, and even close friends. The underlying message is crystal clear. You don't deserve the same level of attention and care as other people in your life. Perhaps most painfully, you realize how your physical presence is tolerated rather than celebrated. At family gatherings, you notice how conversations flow naturally when you're not there, but become forced and formal when you join the group. It's as if your arrival reminds everyone of an unpleasant social obligation, of a role they must play in order to maintain the appearance of a harmonious and respectful family. The fifth and final movement of this symphony of familial contempt is the possibility of transformation, not of your family, which may be lost in irreversible toxic patterns, but of yourself and the way you relate to your own existence. The liberating truth that few have the courage to accept is that you do not need family validation to regain your sense of worth and purpose. Decades of conditioning have made you believe that your happiness depends on the approval and recognition of others, but this belief is a prison that you can open yourself. The first step in this inner revolution is to recognize that the problem isn't you. It's an unhealthy family system that has turned relationships into transactions, that has confused love with convenience, that has reduced a lifetime of dedication to an emotional checking account that no one intends to honor. You're not dramatic because you feel unappreciated. You're not demanding because you want respect. You're not needy because you need affection and recognition. You're human, and humans need genuine connection to thrive. The journey of reconnecting with your own value necessarily involves a complete reassessment of your priorities and relationships. Maybe it's time to invest energy in friendships that you neglected because you were always available to your family. Maybe it's time to rediscover hobbies, interests, and dreams that you've abandoned in the name of being fully available to others. Maybe it's time to discover who you are when you're not defined by the roles you play for others. Setting healthy boundaries isn't cruelty. It's self-care. Saying no to unrealistic demands isn't selfishness. It's self-preservation. Putting your own needs first isn't betrayal of your family. It's recognition of your basic right to dignity and well-being. You've spent decades being the person everyone else comes to when they need something. Now it's time to be the person you come to when you need yourself. The most profound transformation happens when you realize that you can build an emotional family beyond your blood ties, people who value you for who you are, not for what you can offer. True friends, shared interests, and communities of mutual support can become sources of affection and appreciation that are far more genuine than family relationships based on obligation and convenience. You deserve to be surrounded by people who light up when you walk in the door, not sigh when you show up. Finally, the greatest revolution is internal, learning to be your own source of validation, recognition, and love. After decades of caring for others, it's time to apply that same dedication and care to yourself. Celebrate your achievements, forgive your mistakes, honor your journey, recognize your strength. You've survived decades of emotional invisibility, and you're still here, still standing, still have light to offer the world, starting with yourself. That's the true authority that no one can take away from you. The power to define your own worth, regardless of what others think. When you close your eyes and allow the silence of the night to take over your thoughts, you can still feel the echo of that woman you once were, the one who believed with absolute fervor that love was a bargaining chip, that dedication was synonymous with assurance, that sacrifice was the universal language of true affection. That woman did not die. She merely hibernated beneath layers of disillusionment, patiently waiting for the moment when you would understand that the betrayal did not come from those you loved, but from the system that taught you to love in a self-destructive way. The painful awakening you are experiencing today is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your true journey of self-discovery and recovery of your place in the world. The transformation that begins at this moment does not depend on external changes, family reconciliations, or belated recognition from those who have devalued you for decades. It is born from a silent internal revolution, where you finally understand that your value as a human being has never been conditioned by the approval of others, family gratitude, or social recognition. You are valuable because you exist, because you resisted, because you continue to offer light to the world, even when everything around you seemed dark. This inner strength that allowed you to get here carrying the weight of an entire family is the same that can now free you from the emotional prison that you yourself built, brick by brick, through decades of unrealistic expectations and dreams of reciprocity. There is an ancient wisdom that whispers ancient truths in moments of profound solitude. You came into this world alone and you will leave alone. But this is not a condemnation, it is a liberation. Between these 2 points of absolute solitude, you have the sacred power to choose how you want to fill your days, with whom you want to share your energy, where you want to invest your precious time, and how you want to define your own worth. The 60 years you have lived were not lost or wasted. They were the price you paid to learn one of the most valuable lessons of human existence. That self-love is not selfishness, it is survival. And that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. The future that unfolds before you does not have to be a melancholic extension of the past, where you remain hostage to toxic family dynamics, waiting for recognition that may never come. You have the fundamental right to rewrite your narrative, to choose who deserves access to your heart, to decide where you want to invest the energy that still pulses within you. The woman who has dedicated decades to others now deserves to dedicate time to herself, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of justice. Every day that you continue to wait for others to define your worth is a day stolen from your own possibility of happiness and personal fulfillment. The journey of reconnecting with your essence doesn't end when you close this video. It begins when you decide that you deserve something better than crumbs of affection and formal recognition. If these words touched something deep inside you, if you recognized your own pain reflected in this narrative, then you are not alone in this experience. There are thousands of women living this same reality, seeking answers, looking for ways to recover their dignity and self-esteem. Leave your mark in the comments, share your story, because your experience can be the light that another woman needs to see that she also deserves to be valued. Subscribe to this channel to continue receiving content that honors your journey and recognizes your strength, because you deserve to be in a space where your voice is heard, your experience is respected, and your value is recognized. Like this video if it awakens something in you, because this simple gesture is the first step to reconnecting with your own power of choice and self-determination.